Mindfulness. Human beings, it is said, are different from other animals in terms of their high intellect. From the very day we are born, the first thing we are expected to learn is to process language, to make sense of the myriad sounds and gestures bombarded on us by the adults. In essence, we are expected to learn how to gauge the world using symbols, to learn how to think. As we grow a little older, we become better at abstract thinking. We delight in our meanderings of our make-believe worlds of Pokemons and fairies. By the time we are fully grown adults, we have pretty much mastered abstraction. As adults, we delight in our knowledge of critical thought and take pride in knowing the difference between good and bad. The more we know, the more we feel empowered. But is knowledge and intellectual prowess really the epitome of human brilliance? The only way to answer that is by understanding whether a human being becomes happier and healthier if he knows more, whether his or her life becomes more beautiful with more knowledge. For the sake of argument, let's consider a few examples. Albert Einstein, one of the most celebrated intellectuals in the entire history of mankind, and yet in his entire life he had a very difficult time in being faithful to any woman he was in a relationship with. Researchers claim that he either died of syphilis, which is an infection caused through sexual contact, or due to his habit of chain smoking. Isaac Newton, the founder of physics, was also a very miserable sod, and he was so insecure that he rarely had any friends in his entire life. Michael Faraday and Nikola Tesla, the guys due to which you have electricity in your home, both suffered from mental illness before their death. Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, committed suicide after castrating himself. If that is not enough, consider this. A paper was published 2 years ago in the journal Intelligence. The research that they did showed that highly intelligent people are 20% more likely to be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, 80% more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, 83% more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety, and 182% more likely to develop at least one mood disorder. When it comes to physiological diseases, people with high cognitive abilities are 213% more likely to have environmental allergies, 108% more likely to develop asthma, and 84% more likely to have an autoimmune disease. But hyperactive minds are no longer exclusive to scientists and intellectuals. Since the rise of internet, we have entered the age of information. Modern minds are very often engaged in absorbing and processing one form of information or the other. It is no surprise, therefore, that millennials and the Generation Z are the most impacted by this cultural transformation. It is no wonder why, according to a study published last year in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, the rates of depression among teenagers have increased by more than 60%. The excess of knowledge and abstraction, it seems, are certainly not empowering for human beings. So what is happening here? Why is it so that the more time we spend in our heads, the less satisfying our life becomes? The reason is that thought, as much as we would like to believe otherwise, is very limited, and there is something much bigger, grander, and more fundamental than the realm of thought. It is the realm of experience. If thoughts were more fundamental than experience, then one could just lock oneself in a closet and think about traveling the world, or possessing great wealth, and that alone would suffice. But in real world, we would call such a person an escapist, because in reality, experience is the ground where life happens and not thought. In fact, our entire world of thoughts, dreams, and visions are contained within this world of experience. Nothing can exist if it is not experienced, not even thoughts. Thoughts themselves pop up on the screen of experience. Therefore, in order to reclaim our health, it is crucial that we learn to merge back with experience. This merging back with a raw sensory experience is what is referred to as mindfulness. The word mindfulness comes from a Pali word sati, which translates to awareness. With this very faculty of mindfulness, you are aware of the sound of these words and the sensations in your body right now. To help understand further what mindfulness is, let us take an example. Look at this image, for instance. The instant you look at this, your mind, without any effort, interprets it as apple. The amazing thing, however, is that if this image is shown to a Chinese person, his mind will say pingwo. A Russian mind will say yabloko. It is not therefore very difficult to understand that you interpret this image not as it is, but as you are, with your projections imposed upon it. But what then would happen if you could see this image without any labels? Because as we just established, the label is not really a feature of the image, but a feature of the person looking at it. If you could see this image without any preconceived notions, without any projection, without any categorization, it will suddenly become something new, something fresh, something fascinating. It would just be like looking at it for the first time. If you think about it, there was really a time when you saw an apple for the first time in your life, when you didn't even know what to call it. It was probably very intriguing to you at that time, but now it's just a normal everyday apple. The thing is that instead of seeing things with your eyes, we have learned to see them with our mind. The good news, however, is that this faculty to observe your experience without any judgment or projection can be honed with practice. That is, it is possible to view our sensory experiences with the curious eyes of a toddler. This letting in of the fresh experience without muddling it with meanings, labels, or any sort of refinement is a practice of mindfulness. Before we learn how to practice mindfulness, let me tell you a very brief story. Once upon a time, a man visited a monk. Seeing the old monk washing the dishes, the young man asked if he could do the dishes for him. The monk replied, "Go ahead, but if you wash the dishes, you must know the way to wash them." The young man said, "Come on, you think I don't know how to wash the dishes?" The monk answered, "There are two ways to wash the dishes. The first is to wash the dishes in order to have clean dishes. And the second is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes." What the monk really meant was that if while washing the dishes, we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us at the end, thus hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they are a nuisance, then we are not washing the dishes to wash the dishes. Or in other words, we are not taking the experience in and being mindful. We are only pushing the present experience away in favor of what we believe is the better experience, not realizing that this better experience is just a fantasy that only exists in our heads. In a sense, we are compromising the real for the illusion. But that may seem very normal to most of us because our everyday life is usually directed by thoughts. Thoughts move us here and there and everywhere. The problem, of course, is that we can't help but take directions from them. And because almost everyone exhibits this compulsion, we barely even notice it. When we are with someone, we feel like an obligation to say something, to amuse each other's minds, as if sharing our presence is not enough. Thinking itself is not a problem, but we think even when it is not needed. We think while we are cooking our food. We think when we are eating what we cooked. We are thinking when we are brushing our teeth. We are thinking when we are taking a shower. We are thinking when we are ironing our clothes. We are even thinking when we are shitting. But mindfulness is not about shunning thought or getting rid of it. It is just about being aware of them. The amazing thing about mindfulness is that we don't have to force anything. Notice, for example, that you're already aware of your room, of whatever is happening right now. You don't have to force it. You're naturally conscious of this world and can't turn this faculty of consciousness off even if you wanted to. Mindfulness is simply the acknowledgement of this awareness that is already present. Throughout the day, we do multitude of routine chores. If, for example, we practice noticing the sensation of our feet while we are walking, we will be walking mindfully. If, while we eat, we notice the sensations of taste in our mouth, we will be eating mindfully. If, while we are daydreaming, we notice that we are immersed in thoughts, we will be daydreaming mindfully. Note that these sensations and thoughts are already there. We just have to gently notice the fact of their existence. We are just acknowledging these sensations as they are, without interpreting or categorizing them. the more we notice the raw nature of these sensations, feelings, and thoughts, and the longer we learn to stay with this moment by moment awareness of whatever is happening right now, the more clear and beautiful our perception will become. With just a week of practicing this, you will see that even your routine activities will become quite enjoying and peaceful, and the peace gained thus will support you throughout the rest of your day. Here are some words from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who describes how beautiful the simple act of walking can become if done mindfully. Quote, "If we are really engaged in mindfulness while walking, then we will consider the act of each step we take as an infinite wonder, and a joy will open up our hearts like a flower, enabling us to enter the world of reality. I like to walk alone on country paths, rice plants and wild grasses on both sides, putting each foot on the earth in mindfulness, knowing that I walk on the wondrous earth. In such moments, existence is a miraculous and mysterious reality. People usually consider walking on water or on thin air a miracle, but I think the real miracle is not to walk either on water or on thin air, but to walk on earth. Every day, we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the black curious eyes of a child, our own two eyes. All is a miracle." End quote. It may sound silly that how can a simple act of walking can become so beautiful, but not just walking, but all activities, whether ironing your clothes, cleaning your house, washing your dishes, watering the plants, and eating your food, all of these activities can become equally profound and beautiful with consistent practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is essentially the art of being aware of the raw nature of your experience. By raw, I mean to perceive something without imposing on it whatever you know about it, without trying to change or manipulate it, to simply be aware of it. The great thing about mindfulness is that it can be practiced anytime and anywhere. Whenever you're engaged in a routine task, for instance brushing your teeth, then instead of wandering into thoughts about the past and the future, be aware of the fact that you're brushing your teeth. Notice where you are. Notice the sensations in your mouth, the splash of water, the taste of mint. Notice the fact that you've been immersed in thoughts all along. Notice what kind of feelings and emotions are present. In the practice of mindfulness, we are not doing any activity to just get it over with, but to be with it completely, to be present with whatever we are doing. At any time of the day, just gently remind yourself, what is it that I'm doing right now? The answer to this question will allow you to become aware of the current thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are present at that moment. This is the practice of mindfulness in a nutshell. If you initially find it hard paying attention to things, then slow down the pace of the activity to match your capacity for paying attention. With consistent practice of mindfulness, you will become more alert and present in your life. And if you're suffering from depression and bad habits, they will vanish into oblivion like they were nothing real to begin with.